Use your full last name.
All right. So, Japanese verb conjugation. Who's ready? All right. So, first, before we actually start conjugating some verbs, we should probably make sure that everyone's on the basis where we know some verbs. So, let's start off with these few easy ones. Taberu means to eat. Nomu is to drink. Iku is to go. And miru is to see. Easiest one of these to remember is miru. You always think like look into a mirror. Miru is to see.
Wasn't tabe or taberu table?
No.
What's table?
Table is I think it's tsukue.
That's desk, isn't it?
Close enough. But yeah, taberu is to eat. Anyone notice anything about these? They're all infinitives. Does anyone want to take a guess at why we're learning a bunch of infinitives before we actually go through anything?
Probably like if we go to a restaurant or...
Nope. So infinitives are like the to do form of verbs. So like the equivalent would be like if I were to tell you in English to go, that's iku. The reason that we're learning these is because these are, in Japanese, infinitives are the base form, and if we know the base form of a verb, this is the one that we'll see in the dictionary, and then we know how to conjugate it from there, because every other form of the verb stems from this, and you'll see what I mean as we go. So, first we have to learn the polite forms of verbs. Now, there are two main endings to verb infinitives. There's u verbs and there's ru verbs. With u verbs, we change the u ending to imas, and with ru verbs, we change the ending to masu. So, for example, you take a verb like taberu, would be a verb ending with ru. Taberu becomes tabemasu as a polite form of the verb, and this is considered more proper, and this, as we've gone over in previous PowerPoints, is what you'd want to use most of the time. Even casually, you generally use the polite form of verbs. And then nomu is the infinitive form of to drink. Now you'll notice it doesn't end in the character u, but it ends with u sound. So it doesn't matter if it's actually ending with the character u, it just matters that it's ending with an u and not specifically a ru. And nomu would become no mimas. So you see that mu becomes mi now because it has to change the u to i. So no mu becomes no mimas to change it to the polite form. Next up, we have negation, and you can negate both polite and informal forms of verbs. And to do this, you would change any u ending to anai, any ru ending to nai, and any masu ending to masen. So, for example, you saw like how u became like no mu became no mimas. The same thing would apply here. It would become no mi nai, or no manai, to negate it. And then, like for example, we have here miru becomes minai as negation. And for the polite forms, ikimasu is the polite form of iku, and ikimasu would become ikimasen to negate it, to mean does not go or do not go. Any questions so far? on negation or polite forms. Does it all kind of make sense, what we're doing here?
A little bit.
Yeah, once you start to learn a lot more verbs, you'll start to see how easy it is to to tack these endings on and to change them, which is why it's actually easy to just learn a bunch of infinitives and then let them, you want to try to learn the infinitives and then you want to try to use them in as many sentences as possible by just changing the form.
So far easier conjugation than Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Japanese is very organized. It's just that sometimes there's a lot of things. But for the amount of content there is to learn in Japanese, it's very, very organized. So if you can figure out the patterns, it becomes a lot quicker to learn. Next up, we have past tense. Now, how do we change something to past tense? We basically end it with a ta character. So iru would become ita, and masu would become mashita. So you'd have the verb tabemasu, or you'd have taberu becoming tabeta, which would mean did eat. And you'd have nomimasu, which is the polite form of nomu, or to drink, would become nomimashita, which means I did drink, or did drink. Not generally when you use a verb alone like that in Japanese, it implies yourself as a subject, much the same as like whatever a lot of the phrases are that you'll use in English where you'll see an implied subject. And last for what we're going to learn tonight is questions. And, or not last, one of the last ones we're going to learn for tonight is questions. So basically you want to tack a ka onto the end. So if it ends in ru, it becomes ruka. If it ends in mas, it becomes maska. So for example, anata wa maguro ga tabemasu, or tabemasu ka, means did you eat tuna? And that's actually a correction I need to make. I forgot to put the ka on there. Well, you guys get the picture. You can change the polite form into a question by tacking on ka. So masu ka. And then it's actually also very easy when someone's speaking to recognize a question because of the rising intonation at the end. You'll typically raise your voice at the end of a question, ending it in like maska rather than just maska. So when you're speaking it, make sure that you're actually putting that rising intonation at the end to make it sound more correct. Next up is showing desire. So there's two different ways to ask, like, do you want to do this, or to show like I want to do this. So to ask someone if they want to do something, you would actually want to negate the verb and then turn it into a question. So for example, aruki, or arukimasu, which means to walk, to ask someone if they would like to walk would become arukimasen ka. It's generally because the Japanese are very polite, and they would ask you, rather than saying, hey, do you want to go out for a walk, they'd say, would you not like to walk? It's a weird backwards way of saying it. But that's just kind of how it works sometimes. And then to say, like, I want to do something, you would end it in Thai form, and then put a desu after it. So like, taberu would become tabetai desu, which means I want to eat. And of course, when you change the verb form like this, you can actually use it as an infinitive. It actually kind of becomes an infinitive, in where you can go tabetai, to nomutai desu, which would mean I want to eat and drink. And then finally we have actually a list that I got. I don't think we're going to go over all of these here. I'm just going to point out some of like the really big ones, but these are what are kind of considered the core verbs according to this website that I have sourced at the bottom. And these are kind of like the 23 core verbs that you want to know that you'll see most often and make up a good chunk of speech to kind of, basically you can form almost any sentence in Japanese with these 23 verbs without getting very complex. And you'll see, you probably recognize a few of them, like desu is one of the big ones, which just means it is or to be. It's generally the first verb that anyone learns getting into Japanese. Like, oftentimes you'll start out with the phrase like watashi wa Andy desu, which means I am Andy. But another important one here is suru, which means to do. And you'll see that often, you'll see that conjugated in a lot of different ways to actually form other verbs out of, like for example, to make a reservation at a hotel. A reservation, the noun for reservation is yoyaku. And so you conjugate suru as shimashita, or shimashita, and to say that you want to make a reservation, you would say yoyaku shimashita. Another few that we learned are iku, which means to go. I think taberu is probably on here somewhere, but these are all ones that you should probably kind of look over on your own. If you want to get deeper into verbs, we'll probably go over these eventually. But that's all that we have for the grammar and words for the night. Any questions over those? Any concerns, confusion? Yeah, we'll probably go over that next time. We'll probably go over it a bit next time, kind of a review. Yeah. So, all right. So, generally after we're done going over the grammar and stuff, I kind of want to start going through the history of Japan through this channel called Lin Fami, who does little animated shorts. So we'll watch parts 1 and 2
Yes,
today.
I'm late. Sorry. So, how much did I miss?
All of it.
All of it.
Anyway.
Fuck.
We're going to be going through the history of...
Sorry.
We're going to be going through the history of Japan with this channel, Lin Fami. I have a playlist linked here, and I'll also put it in the Discord. But tonight we're going to be watching parts 1 and 2 of his series on the history of Japan from the beginning. And I'm going to stop the recording here because I don't... they're all videos, so you can go and watch them anyway and get the same content that we're getting here. So I'm going to be stopping the recording here as not to go over that.